Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. So, yesterday we left off with a question, and that is based on this, which I think you can see over here. What happened? What happened because Germany chose to print money to solve their problem of being unable to pay their reparations? Now, go back. If this is the first video you've watched and you haven't seen, sorry, I hit the mic. You haven't seen yesterday's assignment. Stop now. Go back and do yesterday's assignment. And then come back here. Are they gone? Okay. So now we must answer the question, what happened? Well, here's what happened. Germany began printing money, literally, like just told the printing presses, go for it, and they start cranking out cash. What happened because of that? Well, guys, grab your snorkels and or scuba gear, because we are taking an economic dive today, and I'm excited about it. Inflation happened. What's inflation? You guys know? Give it a shot, pause me, answer the question. What is inflation? No, I'm not talking about balloons. What we are talking about here is the rise in prices in an economy. So when you hear stories, right, from grandparents or, I guess really older siblings, I don't know, about how back in my day, I used to be able to get me a hamburger for 5 cents. And you're like, well, it costs $5 now, Granny. And they're like, yeah, but back in the day. Anyway, that's inflation over time, right? Something starts out at this price, and over time, the price of that item grows. But it can't just be one item, right? It has to be all prices across an economy rising together. So if the price of hamburgers had gone from 5 cents to $5, but the price of everything else had dropped, there's just something going on with hamburgers, right? So a better way to think about it, rather than just rising prices, is to say that it's a decrease in the purchasing power of currency, meaning the value of the dollar is shrinking. Therefore, in comparison, all prices are going up. Now, there are a lot of ways I can explain this. And a lot of the ways that I can explain this might tempt you to just kind of shut down because there's too many explanations happening at once, or too many things happening at once. And I understand this is not labeled United States economics class. It's labeled U.S. history. But for what we are going to talk about for the next couple of weeks, if you don't understand some basic economic principles, you're not going to understand any of it. So let's talk inflation. Why does it happen, or why can it happen? Well, in order for you to understand the basics here, you have to understand supply and demand. Supply and demand. Now, supply is how much of something there is. And demand is how many people want that thing, right? So supply, demand. Supply, how much there is. Demand, how many people want it. All right? So two things can cause a changing price. If the amount of demand goes up, it can cause an increase in price. If the supply, excuse me, sorry, I glitched. If the supply goes down, that can cause an increase in price, right? So if we think about money, don't be overwhelmed, take a deep breath. there are a lot of things that can cause inflation, which is a decrease in the price or the value of money. I know there's a lot here. Calm down. So, the two things you see are on the right-hand side, cost push, and on the left-hand side, demand pull. So, on the right-hand side is when the supply is changing. On the left-hand side, you have a list of when demand is changing, right? So if on the left-hand side, you have prices, or excuse me, wages going up, right? People in an economy are being paid more money, then that can increase the demand of goods across the economy, therefore causing all of the prices to go up because more people have money to buy stuff with, right? On the other side, cost push, that is when the supply decreases, right? So rising oil prices, you don't really have to worry about in the context that we're talking about now, but like the reason that that could cause a decrease in supply is because it's harder to move stuff around, right? If you have higher taxes, things like that, they can drive down supply. All this is just to explain to you there's a bunch of things that can cause inflation. But the one I really want you to look at is that one right there. Increased money supply. Now, before you wig out on all these things, don't worry. This isn't going to be on the test. This is not. But the idea here, right? This idea is going to be on your test. You do need to know this. I showed you all of that to just show you there's a million factors that can go into inflation. Okay? But in Germany, the inflation was caused almost entirely by one thing. They were printing money. So now, if all of a sudden there is a ton of cash everywhere, that is going to cause the value of that cash to decrease, right? If you ever see something being sold that's like, this is the only diamond of this size and cut, it's worth millions of dollars, right? If you see, look, here's a glass thing that looks kind of like a diamond, there's like billions of those, right? So you can get them for $2 at Walmart. So that difference is what you need to understand. Because the German mark all of a sudden is available in huge quantities because they're printing billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars to pay off their reparations and pay the workers in the Ruhr Valley. So let's look at some different types of inflation, right? What usually happens with inflation over time is that it can change up and down from a few different types, right? There's creeping inflation, which is basically what the United States has experienced. We'll look at the United States here in a second, where it's just like over time from when your grandparents were your age to when you're your age, it's gone up, right? The values of things have gone up. The prices of things have gone up. The value of money, the purchasing power, what it can buy, has gone down. But it's taken 60 plus years, right, for that to just slowly, that's creeping. Walking is a little faster, running is faster, galloping is faster. But over time, usually an economy will be able to adapt to those things. So an inflation over time chart usually looks like this. This is all the way from 1775 to 2015, our United States inflation rate, right? So when it gets higher in the red, that's a higher rate of inflation. And then when it gets down in the blue, that's actually something called deflation. meaning the purchasing power of money goes up instead of down, right? So money becomes more valuable. You can buy more stuff. So if, let's say, between now and when your grandkids are around, it goes back from being $5 for a hamburger to 25 cents for a hamburger, that would be deflation over time, okay? So look at this chart. You'll notice over time, it kind of goes up and down. Inflation, deflation, inflation, deflation. The price of things goes up, the price of things goes down, right? The way you can chart this, the easiest way, honestly, to chart this in your just personal everyday life is watch when McDonald's and Taco Bell reintroduce their dollar menus. That's during deflation, or at least relatively small inflation. And then when they get rid of them again, it's during a period of inflation. Fun fact. So keep an eye on that. Here's the problem, though. There's one type of inflation that breaks this whole curve, this whole chart down here, right? Because even up to galloping, which we saw in like the 1860s there and 1915, all this, right, up and down, it can be recovered from. But there's one type we haven't talked about, and that is this. Sorry for the fuzzy chart here, but you can see creeping, walking, running. Then look, all the way over here, hanging out by himself. That's hyperinflation. Hyperinflation is very, very bad. Here's why. Your economy can't recover from hyperinflation. There's no way for an economy to stabilize prices, right? So now you'll see, like I said, with dollar menus, one company will get rid of a dollar menu, another one will get rid of a dollar menu. They'll be gone for a few months. Everyone kind of gets used to it. It's considered fair pricing again. And they show up again and everybody's like, yay, cheap food, and they buy it, right? It's just kind of this. In hyperinflation, it's a very different situation. Because in hyperinflation, the value of money decreases at such an insane rate that the economy never stabilizes. So let's look at hyperinflation in Germany. At the end of World War I, so 1919, right, when the Treaty of Versailles is signed, the exchange rate between the United States dollar and marks is 8.9 marks per dollar, meaning 1 American dollar will get you 8.9 marks. So we're going to serve that, keep that as the anchor for pricing, right? 1 American dollar costs 8.9 German marks. Well, in 2 years, that goes from 8.9 marks per dollar to 60 marks per dollar. Reichsmarks. The Reichsmark is actually just a mark. It's German currency, right? That, ladies and gentlemen, would be considered galloping inflation. But that's just the beginning. Because if you remember what happened in 1922, if you go back to your notes from yesterday, in 1922, they actually defaulted, right? The Ruhr Valley was taken over, and Germany began trying to figure out how they were going to solve the problem. So, in 1922, 320 marks were worth $1. We have a problem now. The gallop has not stopped. But in 1922 December, right? So we start out, this one is spring. In December of the same year, 8,000 marks equals $1. We're now on the edge, right? This is a point where that spike, the value of money is going, and the cost of everything is going, right? Because remember, as the value of money goes down, that means prices increase. Because if money is worth less, it takes more money to exchange for one other thing, right? But ladies and gentlemen, we haven't even reached the point that they were printing money. That happens in 1923. In 1923, ladies and gentlemen, the German government, the Weimar Republic, chooses to print money. And I don't mean like they're printing a few $100s. I mean they are attempting to print their way out of 6.6 billion pounds worth of debt. And what you have to understand is that 6.6 billion pounds stays the same in value, just like the US dollar does here. Meaning every time that you see this inflation, when you see 60 Reichsmarks become 320, become 8,000, it's that many more marks that they have to pay per pound. Meaning now in marks, their debt is in the trillions. So they decide to try and print trillion-dollar coins. So literally, ladies and gentlemen, I came unplugged. Literally, ladies and gentlemen, they're trying to print trillions of dollars. But we just said, if there's more cash available, the value of that cash decreases. So the mark loses almost all of its value when they start doing this. And prices rise so fast that the mark cannot stabilize, right? When we saw for the United States that up and down and up and down and up and down to keep it kind of at the same rate. This is an up that it can't come down from, right? So at this point, literally, when you walk into work in the morning, they're paying you 100 marks an hour. When you walk out of work that night, your 100 marks are now worth less than a penny compared to the marks in the morning, because the value of money is decreasing that rapidly. So what you want then is you want your pay to go up. So they raise your pay, which increases the amount of marks available, which decreases the value of the mark. So ladies and gentlemen, the economy straight up falls apart because every single thing they do to fix the problem involves putting more money out there. And the more money that's out there, the less the money's worth. And the less it's worth, the more money they put out there. And the less it's worth, the more money they put out there. And the more money they put out there, the less it's worth. So basically, at this point, Germany is straight up raining cash on everybody. And that cash is becoming progressively, and I don't mean like over time progressively, I mean over the course of hours progressively, worth less and less and less and less until it's worth less. Let me give you some examples, shall we? In January of 1923, 48,000 marks are worth $1. Meaning, what in America you can buy for $1, it takes 48,000 marks to purchase in Germany. By June, 6 months later, what you can buy for $1 in the United States, in Germany, you must pay 193,000 marks for. Like, do you understand the concept of this here? Let's say that you had saved your entire life, right? And you had built up a retirement account. And that retirement account started out worth, let's say you're really rich here, right? That retirement account is worth 1,000,000 marks. And in American dollars, that's like $500,000 at the end of 1919, right? That's a lot of money. But then 2 years later, the value of that decreases from being equivalent to $500,000 to being equivalent to about $50. Your retirement is gone. It's the same amount of money, right? It's the actual same amount of physical bills, marks, but it's worth nothing. But if you thought that was bad, that took 6 months at least. In the months, two months between June and August, the amount it took to purchase $1 worth of goods in Germany ballooned from 193,000 marks to 11 million marks. 11 million. But we ain't done, because from August to October, the amount of marks that it took to purchase $1 worth of goods went from, I almost said it before, went from 11 million to 250 million. So now, if in America you can go out and buy a loaf of bread for $1, in Germany, you have to go out and buy it for 250 million marks, or their dollars. What? But we're not done. Because, ladies and gentlemen, by December of that year, if you wanted to buy that same loaf of bread that would cost you $1 in the United States, in German money, if you live there, you're going to have to spend 5.7 billion marks. What? Like, what? So here in the United States, we get super, like, envious of the rich and all, like, man, I wish I had that kind of money. Donald Trump's total worth when he was running for election in 2016 was valued around $10 billion, which is more money than I will ever see in my lifetime, right? But imagine if you were someone, we're not even talking about the poor anymore here. You were someone as rich as Donald Trump, and your $5 billion in the course of 1 year went from being worth $5 billion to $1. So, like, what you could have bought hotels around the globe for will now buy you a cheeseburger. So, ladies and gentlemen, it goes nuts to the point that by the end of 1923, we're reaching a point where trillions of marks are required in order for people to purchase anything. Now, obviously, at the point that it requires you to walk with trillions of dollars down to buy a loaf of bread, money is worthless. So, if you want to buy something, you're going to do it by trading with people, right? It's like, hey, I've got this shovel. I want your bread. I'll trade you the shovel for the bread, right? So just to give you one last snapshot into this, by November 1923, here are just some example prices. Now, these would literally be changing by the minute, all right? This is simply a snapshot on the 1st of November of 1923. If you were a German citizen and you wanted to go out and buy a loaf of bread, you had to bring with you $3 billion. Good luck fitting that in your pocket. They didn't use credit cards. This is like you have to physically carry $3 billion with you to buy your bread. If you want, because we're in Germany here, not condoning or condemning anything, but if you want to buy the classic German drink, one glass of beer would cost you 4 billion marks. If you want to be real fancy and feed your family with some meat, that 1 pound of meat is going to cost you $36 billion. Excuse me, marks, because that's what they use as their dollar. So now we have a problem in Germany, ladies and gentlemen. It's crazy. It is chaos. People are very literally unable to afford anything. And the question then becomes, what do you do with money? Because money at this point, even if you're a billionaire and you literally in your house have stacks of cash, it's not worth anything. So instead of buying kids toys, because toys cost money, why not just, let the kids play with the money? Because it's what they did. Those are stacks of bills. And it's actually cheaper to let the kids make a fort out of the stacks of bills than it is to buy the kid some chalk. If you think that's bad. Literally, you know how like when you're walking along outside Walmart or somewhere and there's like a $20 bill laying there, you're like, oh, pick that up, right? There's like a $1 bill laying there. You're probably like, oh, pick that up. There's a penny laying there. You're kind of like, is it worth the effort to bend down, right? You got to kind of think about it. It's not worth it. That's piles of bills. It's not worth bending down to pick up. They're worthless. It's crazy to think about. If you wanted to go buy something, you had to do it like that. I'm here for my bread. Wheel in the cart, right? So, here's a picture of some prices for you. This was earlier on. All right, this was before November. This was earlier in the year. So you got all of your prices there. You got a loaf of bread there for 50,000, 4 eggs for 40,000. Some Wurst down there, 180,000 for a sausage. Tomatoes 40,000, right? Coffee's 60. It's crazy. Like, it's crazy. It got so crazy, ladies and gentlemen, that if you wanted to start the fire in your house, like get your stove going, it was cheaper to burn money than to buy wood. So people would just burn the money. What are we having for dinner? Oh, fried eggs. Yum. Fried over a stack of cash. And on the left, German banknotes being pulped for use as waste paper. They used it for toilet paper. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is the situation. To answer the question, what happened in Germany because they chose to print money to pay these things off. So at this point, we're going to step away from Germany as it is a burning pile of money, not in a good way. And as we leave the German economy and their money supply in the toilet, literally, we'll find out starting tomorrow what's happening around the rest of the world. So, what I want you to do is tell me in the answer thing, what would you do with your money? And how would you manage to survive if you lived in Germany? What would you do if you were a German citizen in 1923? What you gonna do? Tell me in the answer thing, wherever it is, and ask the questions on the public comments if you have questions, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye. If I can figure out how to get out of this. Stuck looking at my face there. Bye.